Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villeries Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villeries provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villeries Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Eric Asher with you, hosting tonight, along with a great panel as always. Tonight, Rene, Nadeau, and David Grubb of CrescentCitySports.com, and so much more. They'll tell you a little bit about that, and we'll cover all the home teams tonight. We will get to all the home teams tonight, I promise you. It'll be Saints, it'll be Pelicans, it'll be Tulane and LSU, and breaking it down for us, as I said, two great guys from CrescentCitySports.com. Rene, thanks for being with us. Always good to have you, my friend. Tell the folks about CrescentCitySports.com, but also you'll be doing some games on TV this year.
I will. Well, it's always good to be with you two guys, and I look forward to this. And, you know, as we always say, Eric, football never goes away.
Right.
And looking forward to college season or the football season. I'll be doing some games on ESPN and some other networks, college football. Also work for CBS Radio for Saints games and some Pelicans games and some other things that go on, some bowl games. Right for CrescentCitySports.com, and I guess that's about it. But you know, it seems like we always got something going on, and David knows that when you were at CrescentCitySports.com. And you know, with Saints starting up in another week or so, it's just the football season is here.
Yeah, finally.
Yes.
But it's been, I'll tell you what, for those of us that are in talk radio, even the guys that are covering sports when you're doing it in just more than just one sport, the Pelicans have been a godsend because it has kept us going. I mean, normally this time of the year, I am trying to pull subjects out to try to keep an audience, and I have not had to worry about that at all. It's been a smooth transition now into Saints. And so, again, thank you, David Griffin. We appreciate that very much. Speaking of radio and, of course, CrescentCitySports.com, my good friend David Grubb's here tonight. Dave, getting close, huh?
Yes, 17 days away, August 5th, starting Hard in the Paint with David Grubb on Sports 1280 from 8 to 10 a.m. Really excited. Everything's coming together. So I think it's going to be a great addition to the local lineup.
No doubt.
And we're going to have a lot of fun with that. Still, obviously, writing with CrescentCitySports.com, doing podcasts and a little bit of writing with thebirdrights.com as well. And I'll be sitting in tomorrow with Dave DeCorbier on the D-League from 2 to 4. So
sounds good.
I'm everywhere.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. And, of course, guys, you're going to have to check it out again. August 5th, right?
That's right.
August 5th, coming right around the corner. Guys, let's get started. We'll start with Saints tonight. And what's interesting about this year, and really kind of last year as well, but I don't think a lot of us really kind of thought about it at the time, but we saw it at the end of camp when all the cuts were made, and you saw that final cut where, again, there's just a plethora of players that go out on the market, and every single player that the Saints cut were snatched up by another NFL team. And as I mentioned on the radio show today, not just snatched up by another NFL team, but guys that stayed on rosters throughout the season. You know, even if a guy got cut, he was picked up immediately by another team on a roster, which again shows you the depth and shows you, again, Jeff Ireland and the whole crew out there, what they've been able to do in terms of player personnel. This year, it's pretty similar. You know, you're looking at some draft picks that you believe are going to make the team, but there's not a lot of open roster spots for this team.
And you're going to see, if there's a spot that you're going to see some really good players cut, it's going to be defensive secondary. And you're going to see some guys who are not only won't make the roster here, but have a good chance of starting with another NFL team. There's a lot of talent there. There's some spots also. The offensive line is going to be pretty deep. is going to be deeper than it has been. You're going to have to make some tough cuts there.
Yes.
And when Sheldon Rankins comes back and Onyemata comes back, the defensive line will be set too. But that defensive line is, as the season rolls on, you're going to have a lot more depth,
yes.
and you could interchange some players and not really have a drop off at all. Linebacking core is not going to be as deep. It just won't. You know, you see a guy like a Caden Ellis who will play special teams, but he'll get some reps because right now, I wouldn't be surprised if they picked up another linebacker somewhere in training camp, and also, I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be totally shocked if another wide receiver comes aboard.
Yes.
Because it's not set in stone who's going to be. And you got too many uncertainties right now. The Traquan Smith and Kirkwood and guys like that who can be good.
Yes.
But you don't know how good. And then Simi Cobbs is a guy. And Lil Jordan Humphrey is a guy that could be a dark horse. Right. I've talked to him. Right. He's a big physical guy. And he's a guy that could be a guy to make this roster and be productive this year.
No doubt. How many roster spots you think? I mean, not many, right, Dave?
Oh, it's got to be less than 10.
Yeah.
I mean, really, what you're looking at.
Right.
Like you said, there are really only 3 positions that you're looking at where you have need.
Yes.
And so.
And list those if you would.
Yeah, the wide receiver spot. Just you're looking for people to merge. You need a linebacker, somebody again to. You want more pursuit from that position,
yes,
and some speed there. And I think, again, maybe you're at the offensive line. There still may be some movement there, especially depending on how guys adapt to new positions, because there is a lot of changeover on that line. So I think that's a spot where you could see somebody sneak in and push a veteran out of a spot. But yeah, outside of that, the roster's pretty set.
Yeah.
And, especially with the offseason acquisitions that they've made to shore up a lot of those holes.
And you know what's interesting is, again, the teams are never the same. You guys know this. When personalities change, when you lose big personalities and big leaders like Mark Ingram in the locker room, you may glaze over that. That's big, especially when you get somebody that has the command of the locker room, much like he does. But other leaders emerge, especially young players. You wonder about the psyche of the team, but then you say to yourself, this is not the Saints of a few years ago where they didn't have a strong core within that locker room. Because, look, it's tough. You get the Minnesota Miracle, you lose on that, and then, of course, the Nola no call. That's a tough spot. You got to believe that, again, the core leadership in this locker room will not allow this team to kind of stray.
Well, you look at it kind of like what the Buffalo Bills went through when they lost 4 straight Super Bowls.
Right.
The mental strength that it takes to keep rebounding from disappointment after disappointment and then go through another season requires great leadership. Sean Payton is focused. Drew Brees is focused because he has to be aware that the end is near. And then you look at guys like Alvin Kamara, who is now in the featured role. You look at Mike Thomas, who's about to play for a big money contract. He has to emerge not just as a great receiver, which we already know he is, but he has to be a leader in that locker room for these young receivers. So I think the Saints have a good deal of that leadership to be resilient and come back, but somebody is going to have to hold that together all season long. And it can't all fall on Drew Brees, especially on the defensive end. We know that you have some great players, you have some great leadership, but it's going to be a mental challenge again to get through this slugfest.
Right, Rene, you've been in the locker room as a Tiger, as a player. You've obviously covered the LSU for a long time. You've covered a lot of Saints locker rooms. Talk about this locker room.
And the thing is, too, and a guy that is a leader on this team, it may surprise people, but Thomas Morstead is a leader.
Yes.
And he's the player representative. And I mean, you got Drew Brees, you got Cam Jordan, you got A.J. Klein, you got Demario Davis. You got some guys that can speak up and their voice is heard. An interesting spot that I think bears watching is that center spot. And right now, and I've talked to people who I think, some NFL people who I think would know, right now, Cam Tom is the best.
Cameron Tom?
Yes, he's the best center they have. Eric McCoy can get up to speed, but Nick Easton might be. I don't know. He may be the odd man out. And what may happen with him, even though he can play center or guard, is what do you do if you carry 3 guards? You got Warford and you got Pete and you got Will Clapp.
Right.
Do you carry Will Clapp with the salary he has, or do you carry Easton with that $24 million salary, or do you look for trade partners? I'm just saying, looking down the road, if in fact Nick Easton doesn't assert himself as a starter or as a potential swing guy, if it's close with a Will Clapp or an Easton, that's going to be some tough decisions. And they have that. And they have that. And Marshall Newhouse came in, and I think he could be a really, really very cerebral guy. And he can help in that tackle position because Teron gets hurt so much, and Pete has to go out. And if you can keep Andres Pete at guard and get a Newhouse or a guy like that, that would be great. And that's certainly something they're looking really hard at.
I think that's definitely a need, especially when you see as much as Armstead has been injured. You hate to move Pete because then there's so many moving parts on that line. You had a Max Unger at one time where you say, okay, if you move Pete, it's not that big of a deal. Now you're either going to have, as Rene mentioned, Cameron Todd, Nick Easton, or McCoy. The Saints would probably want McCoy to be the starter, and that even is, you're taking a chance there with a rookie, with, again, an aging quarterback. What are your thoughts at that center position? And then, of course, kind of move into the offensive line, because I think Rene made a great point. They need another tackle, and really a tackle, if you hope, that can swing guard to tackle.
Right.
But if you needed to, just a guy that can swing from left to right, if possible.
Yeah, my concern always with Andrews Pete is that he performs better with stability.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a guy who mentally flips that switch really easily and quickly to a different position. And I just think the more you can keep him in one spot, the better it is for that line. We know how important the center position is. When the Saints have had a long line of very good to Pro Bowl quality centers over the years. It's so important for this team to have that continuity, and they won't have that this year. That adaptive process for Drew Brees, getting those signals correct, especially with the offense being a little bit different this season as well. I don't know how McCoy is going to be the favorite for that job as much as they would want him to have it. You cannot mess around in this season.
It, right?
You cannot afford to have a learning curve early in this season, because home field advantage has to be the goal for this franchise. The Saints have to have it going into the postseason to try to minimize the possibilities of any of those two things that have happened the last couple of years happening again in the Superdome.
It's almost unfair for me to ask you guys this because they haven't put the pads on. Nobody's been hitting yet. But Rene, I'll take you first. Who do you think will be the starting center for this team? You think it'll be Cameron Todd?
If we started today, it would be. If they started today. Now, McCoy has to come up. I think it's just little things like technique things and just learning. And I mean, he played in the SEC, but this is, and Will Clapp will be the first to tell you, it is a big step. And Will is going to be a guard. He's not going to be a center.
Yes,
I mean, that's But I mean, the thing is that where does Drew Brees step up? He stepped up in the middle, and boy, if you want to you want to make sure that he's got protection in the middle to guards Wofford and Andres Pete. But when you got a center, that's such a vital position. And Unger, not only did he pull that line together, he made the calls and everything like this. And I think Eric McCoy still has a little bit of a learning curve, and I don't know. You can't force it.
Right.
But I think if they started, without a question, I would put money on it. Cameron Todd would be the starter if they started the game.
Your thoughts, Dave?
Yeah, I just think they cannot allow that transition to take place with Drew at the age that he is. We've seen the seasons where they struggle is when Drew is taking hits.
Yes.
And he needs to be able to step up into the pocket, especially as the young receivers develop. Because we don't know how crisp their routes are going to be.
Right.
We don't know if they're going to be able to break open. You've got a new tight end on this roster as well. So that learning process alone is going to be difficult enough to have somebody who's adjusting to making these calls and facing the defensive lines and linebackers that the Saints are going to face on that schedule this season. You cannot afford to miss any of those calls. And so I think it's just hard to put McCoy in that position.
Right. So Easton or Tom, in your opinion, one of those two?
I think it'd be Tom.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think they want Easton to start at center.
Right. Guys, let's talk about the wide receiver position. You mentioned a bunch of names. One name you didn't mention was Rashard Matthews, late addition. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that Cam Meredith has never been healthy here. What are your thoughts about the wide receiver position? Because, look, there's no doubt the offensive line, the injuries last year really led to again, the bottoming out of the offense, not scoring as many points as they were, the struggles that they had. But a lot of that was kind of a ripple effect because you didn't have receivers that were running the crisp routes, as Dave mentioned, guys that understood maybe the concepts here, guys were kind of learning on the job.
And this is going to be a year of stepping up. Traquan Smith and Kirkwood. This is after
no doubt.
last year. This is going to be a year for them. Rashard Matthews, this is an opportunity for him. I'm not saying they given up on Cam Meredith, but I just think that he's going to have to do something now to catch their attention. They're going to give him opportunities, but he's going to have to do something because the injury has really taken a bite out of him. And the guys we mentioned before, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Semi Cobbs, those guys are both big physical guys, and they're going to get a lot of opportunity, a lot of look-sees. And there's only so many balls that goes around and so many reps. And, a guy like a Cameron Meredith, he's been here for a couple of years now. unless he steps up, if he's healthy, okay, it's one thing. But unless if he's not totally healthy right now, he's going to fall back in the pack because these other guys want reps. They want to see these guys, what they can do. They want to see who the other receiver is going to be with Mike Thomas and some of the guys, and who can be that feature guy and take a little pressure off of him. And it's yet to be determined, but they certainly have enough quality athletes, and they have enough skill there. They just have to find the right combination.
Right. Got to hope that Ted Ginn stays injury-free. He's one of the keys going forward. When he went down, that hurt them in terms of a deep threat. The maturation process of Traquan Smith, Kirkwood. They pulled Simi Cobbs off Washington's practice squad, put him on the active roster. There's a reason why they did that. What do you think happens? How does that shake out at wide receiver now?
The big thing is somebody has to emerge as that slot receiver. Because hopefully you've got Ginn healthy on the outside, on one side, Thomas on the other. So it depends on who's going to emerge and take over that slot position. Last season, the difficulty was guys had the drops. Yes. These young guys, in pressure situations, even when they were wide open, they had the drops. So that middle position, running that slot, those are guys who have to have great hands, who are willing to take physical contact. And now adding Cook at tight end, you're hoping again that he can work that middle area as well. But the Saints' biggest problem is when Drew only had one half of the field to work with.
Right.
It made the offense impossible. And then, again, you have to go back to the running back situation and how it impacts the wide receivers as well. Yes. Because Kamara loves to go out and catch balls. So when he's not in the back, lined up in the backfield, again, it puts more pressure on the running game. Are they going to be able to get those play action opportunities that they got before with Ingram and Kamara in the backfield? There's going to be adjustment at a lot of different levels for this team. Wide receiver, it's somebody's just got to seize it. Right. You can't have it backpedal into it.
And look, they haven't made many mistakes in the last few years in terms of personnel. But one mistake that really kind of harmed them was letting Willie Snead go. I mean, again, you're talking about still today looking for another slot receiver. This was a guy that, again, he had a down year before they didn't retain him, but again came back and really played well for Baltimore last year. And believe me, if he was in a Saints uniform, they would be searching for that slot receiver right now. And it is what it is at this point. Guys, I do want to talk a bit about Jared Cook and what he brings to the table. Why don't you take that first, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, Cook played very well on a very bad team last year in Oakland, and he has the ability to stretch the field. He has the ability to be physical. But again, he also has had his issues as a player as well. He's been inconsistent with his production from year to year. He's been injured at times. I think he's a very talented player, but again, I think he's a short-term solution to the tight end problem. But again, when you're dealing with Drew Brees and the shortness of his future with the Saints, that's okay. But Cook's going to have to produce. The Saints, again, are best when they have a tight end who can get them 50 catches.
Yes.
If you can get them and be productive in the red zone. We saw, ever since Marcus Colston has left, without having that target in the red zone, the Saints have not been the same type of team in scoring. And especially once we lost, you go back to, why is his name escaping me right now? Jimmy Graham.
Right.
So you go back to those threats in the red zone. This team will be in the red zone a lot, and you can't get threes this year.
Right. Your thoughts on Jared Cook? And one thing that I'm a little concerned about always when you get a guy over 30.
I see a lot of Ben Watson in him.
Okay.
Skill-wise, the way he approached it. Ben is a cerebral guy, very dependable. And I see a lot of him, a lot of athleticism, the same type of athleticism. I don't want to jump off of this, but I tell you a guy who, as a wide receiver, too, that we overlooked. He's not sexy, but he's a guy who comes hard hat and all is Austin Carr. He's a guy, and he's not going to catch 100 balls, but he's very dependable, and he's faster than people think. He's a 4.5 guy.
But I agree with you. There's a reason they did the same thing with him. They did with Simi Cobbs. They pulled him off, got him from New England, kept him on the active roster so nobody could grab him, but he hasn't done anything.
I know, and and I can't say. I mean, he's a good receiver. He's not a great receiver. He's a good receiver. He's an option. And but the tight end position, Josh Hill is going to be good. Alizé Mack is a guy that has a lot of talent, is a good athlete. But I think Jared Cook is a guy that can duplicate what Ben Watson did here. Very, very similar. Solid, gave some good years here and caught a lot of balls. He can catch 60 passes. I mean,
that's interesting because some people want to compare him to being what Jimmy Graham was when he was.
No, I don't think he's that kind of athlete.
No. I think he's more Ben Watson.
Yeah, because he's more stout.
Yes.
Whereas Jimmy was a vertical guy.
Yes.
And I think, with Cook, you're looking at a guy who can squat in the middle
Right.
and get you those catches. He can sit on the sideline and get you, move the chains that way. He's not going to be a guy who gets a 50-yard catch and breaks away from people, but he can be a chain mover, and he's very effective at that.
Yeah. Guys, as I mentioned earlier, we all know Mark Ingram gone. Again, not just the physical type play and what he brought to the team. The physicality of Mark Ingram is going to be missed. Look, he was hands down the best pass blocker at the running back position for this team. And of course, what he meant to this team in the locker room. It is look, when you lose a player like that, and the way it went down with the contract, which is still mind-boggling, he should be a New Orleans Saint. I put that on the agent more than anything else.
Yes.
Okay, but Latavius Murray comes in. He's not a bad back. Okay, he's just not Mark Ingram.
No, but he's a better blocker than you think, and he's a big physical guy. He's 230 pounds, and but who you have after him, and there's some suspects right now.
Yes, I agree.
And so Dave
Instead of prospects, suspects, right?
Suspects. So but I still think they're going to bring guys in. Dwayne Washington is a guy who came back, and I'm drawing a blank. The guy from I did a story from Southern Cal, the guy they brought in from Boston.
Yeah, I'm doing that too right now.
Okay, anyway.
I'm so focused on
and I did a story,
but
anyway, he's Allen. Anyway, he's
Allen, the kid was at Baltimore?
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
Allen. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, he's a guy that he thinks he can fill in. Matt Days, they brought in a guy,
Right.
him, another one. But again,
And they got the young kid from Nebraska, too, the undrafted free agent.
Yes. Ezigbo, I think.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Very similar to Kamara.
Very much,
So
yeah.
it's going to be hard for him to get
But
on
I
the
still
field.
think they're suspects. And they all do something good, but nothing great. One might be a pretty good runner, not a great blocker, a decent receiver. So you got to put a few together to really replace what Ingram did. Ingram was a good blocker, good between the tackles, had pretty good hands. I mean, he did a lot of things well. So you're going to have to. It's going to be by committee, and I don't know how the salaries fit and everything else, but. It's going to be really, really interesting. And again, I really think that when there start to be some cuts, that the Saints may look at some other running backs from other teams to see if they don't find what they're looking for here, just to see the right.
You know how difficult it is for Sean Payton to trust a back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It took Mark Ingram years to earn that
And he had to
trust.
develop.
Yeah.
Okay, he had to develop.
It took him.
Yeah.
I mean, he had the fumbling issues when he first got to New Orleans. He was behind.
He was not a good blocker.
No. So and he was behind Thomas, and it's just Pierre Thomas, and it takes time for him to trust those guys. So somebody you'd like to see a back emerge to pair with Kamara, because the one thing you worry about with Sean Payton is if the running game starts slow, does he just throw and it's 40 attempts? And the Saints, when Drew Brees thws 40 passes, are a terrible team, and he's got to be able to trust that running game to win games for him this season, especially, the Saints are going to get leads, but they've got to be able to run the ball in the second half.
Yeah, I would agree. And then, of course, Kamara, again, how much of a pitch count do you have on Kamara now? Because they expect him to be carrying the load in terms of the offense when running the football, but we know how much of a dynamic pass catcher he is.
And the thing you got to be careful with Kamara, you better not get him hurt. Boy, you in trouble.
Well, there's no other player on the roster like him.
Talk about a drop-off.
Right.
So
He's like Le'Veon Bell. He's basically that type of player.
You got to use him properly and keep your fingers crossed when he's running that he doesn't get hurt. And he's been staying injury-free. But, boy, if he goes down, when you hit Ingram and Kamara is one thing. But if you lose Kamara now, that's going to be a big, big drop-off. And that you're talking about throw 40 times.
Right.
Drew Brees, he'd be throwing 60 times. So it would be a whole different offense.
Yeah, but again, I don't think the offense is the issue here. And even on defense right now, you got to like where they are on all three levels of defense. I think the biggest question mark right now is, Marcus Davenport, him making the next step. Who's going to be able to be the guy that's going to be behind Marcus Davenport or splitting time with Marcus Davenport? And then can the guys that in the middle, Brown and et al., can those guys hold up the middle until Onyemata gets back, which after one game suspension, and then Rankins, how will he be when he comes back? So on paper, the defensive line looks fine. You just got guys have to emerge.
I mean, you really want to protect, the outside pass rush, and so not having Rankins at maybe 100% when he starts, I think, is a big issue. They got to get that push up the middle so that they can get some edge rush, because they just don't have linebackers who are pass rushers. They get their rush from the D-line. That's the Saints. That's the way it's been generated ever since Sean Payton came to New Orleans. That depth there, and whether guys can come back and understand their positions and create that pass rush, I think is kind of a question mark. Not a big one, But I think it is a question mark nonetheless. If you're not able to maintain that rush and that push up the middle, it will affect that secondary and in particular the linebackers.
Yeah. Your thoughts on the defensive line, because everything starts up front. I think I agree with you. There's going to be some tough cuts on the back end with the secondary. I would agree they probably need to add a linebacker if possible. But to me, the key is up front.
And as long as Onyemata is out, you're going to see Cam Jordan slide inside more for that first game. Mario Edwards could be.
He's
a
around.
280 guy. He's 285. He's not big, but he can go inside.
Right.
Yeah, he's a good athlete.
Right. Taylor Stallworth played pretty well last year.
And I'm going to tell you, Taylor Stallworth is a guy they're going to count on, and he's earned the opportunity to be where he is. Trey Hendrickson, this is his year, buddy. He better do something
because he's got Wes Horton breathing down his neck right now from Carolina.
Exactly, and this is his third year, Trey Hendrickson. So this is a year that you're going to have to really step up and show that you've made that next step. And he'll get the opportunity now because Cam Jordan, again, is going to move inside in the absence of Onyemata in that first game. And you're going to see Hendrickson get more opportunities in that first game because of Onyemata's absence. So in Wes Horton, again, Porter Justin, a guy from Southern Cal, is a guy they're going to look at. Is going to get some reps and get some good long looks. And a guy called Granderson from Wyoming, they liked him.
Right.
And he's gone now.
He's gone. At least for this year, because again, 6 months in jail, you're in the middle of the season. You'd have to literally be in a situation where you're desperate, but as a prospect, maybe down the line. But remember, Saints, they don't have the luxury of when somebody's cut trying to put on the practice squad. A lot of times other teams are picking them up. How big is this for Davenport? He's got to make the next step, right?
That's what they're counting on. They brought him in to be a difference maker. And he shows flashes, but it's time. It's time. The Saints need stars on that defensive front. And you have one. You have Cam Jordan.
That's right.
And so you need another. And in this league, you look at what the Rams put together defensively around Aaron Donald and what he's been able to do.
Yes.
You look at Minnesota and their front seven, what they've been able to do. The teams that are most successful have 6 or 7 guys that they can rotate in and out, stay fresh, but your main guys are on the field and performing at a high level. This is his opportunity. This is his opportunity because Cam Jordan's not young either.
Right.
He's he's not old in the NFL.
He's got a lot of tread on that tire.
Right. And from being the guy for so long, taking on those double teams for years
and being
getting beaten up, they need him to be a guy that is a true difference maker on that line.
Talk about Davenport. Because, again, I know that last year you were pretty high on him coming out of school.
Well, he's got great athletic skills, and they drafted him, and they gave a lot up for him on projection, on hope. And I think a guy like him, he played for Frank Wilson, is a really good coach, know him very well, and he did some good things. But when you step up into this league, you better have a repertoire of moves and be able to counter moves, because these guys, these left tackles and these right tackles that you're going against now, they figure you out. They watch film and stuff. And so you better have some counter moves and things like this. I think he's going to work on it, but he's going to have to adapt during the game and realize that this is, I'm getting shut down here and I got to use this and that. Spin moves, good, your hands and things. I don't know exactly what he needs to work on, but there's some things he needs to fine tune. I think normally for a rookie who comes like him, he's going to go back to his comfort zone and use the things that he used in college, and that gets you so far. Right. And it probably got him some sacks and some other things, but after a while you hit a wall and you realize what worked at UTSA is not going to work in the NFL, and I got to step it up. And it's going to depend on how much he wants it, how he adapts to coaching, and how much he improves. But they really going to give him every opportunity possible. And boy, I tell you what, he's going to be heavily counted on now because Sheldon Rankins and with Onyemata out, it's his time to shine.
Yes, no doubt. All right, final question, guys. Michael Thomas contract gets done before the start of the regular season?
I think so.
Yeah, I think they want to have that done.
Yeah,
I think the Saints do not want to have that carry over.
They don't want to have it carrying over. Plus, again, you want to be able to utilize the cap room that you have right now. And that's one of the reasons why, again, they didn't go after a Gerald McCoy or someone else because, again, they realized they had to pay Cam Jordan and they had to pay Michael Thomas. I'm with you guys.
Just quickly, Thomas's future is so important because if this is Breeze's last season and you're going with Teddy Bridgewater next year, let's say you have to have a number one receiver there.
All right, I'll ask the question before we get out of here. Do you think it's Breeze's last year? Because I don't. Win or lose, I don't think it is. And I'll tell you why, and I've said this before. I think, first of all, he is a competitor. As long as he can play and play at a high level, I think he's going to want to continue to do it. And I think there's another little part of this with his kids, just enjoying being around the NFL in a locker room, etc., and how much they enjoy it. And look, those kids are young. They're only going to be able to do that for so long. And I think he'll try to stretch it out if he can. I mean, if he physically can do it. Now, if he gets injured, that may be very, very difficult for him to come back at his age. But if he's healthy, I think you're going to have to push him out the door.
I think that he's got a lot of Peyton Manning in him, that if he cannot play at the level he is used to playing at, and I've talked to defensive backs, and sometimes defensive backs are very confident, but I've had some defensive backs in the NFL I've talked to, and they said they've seen a difference in him the last few years. Yep. He's not the
velocity?
Drew Brees. Just a difference. He's not the Drew Brees he was 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. I say, well, age, okay, I understand that. But if he realizes I cannot make this throw, this back shoulder fade, this tight window throw in the middle, Peyton Manning, same thing. I can't do this anymore. This is just not a fun game anymore. And I think that is going to be a situation that's going to make his decision. At this time next year, you're right. He could say, well, he'll know at the end of this year.
Right, he'll know.
If he starts to have one of those last 4 games again where you can see that he's doing a lot of drop-offs, because you see the distance get shorter as the year goes on the deep ball. You see that there's a lot more to the backs and short routes to Thomas. You just, I think if that arm fatigue continues, it does get hard as a matter of pride.
Was that fatigue, though? Was that, again, not trusting that offensive line?
But we've seen it each of the last few years where those numbers start to fade, and especially, and like you said, people talk about it in the postseason in particular, that he just doesn't look the same throwing the football in the postseason. And I think that, it's for quarterbacks, when it ends very quickly. Like Brett Favre. Right.
I'm with you.
It goes from almost MVP to next year, can't even.
I'll ask you guys again because I think that he's lost something on the long ball, but I didn't see him losing anything on the short intermediate patterns. Have you guys?
Well, it's hard to say because you don't know what kind of throw he's making in his checkdowns. He may think that you don't know this. Right. Again, a 30-yard pass down the field, he questions, can I make this throw now in his mind? He makes this decision very quick. All of a sudden he goes to the check down, maybe a slant route or something like this. So he knows what he can and cannot do, but no one prepares more than him and has the mental capabilities that he has in a game and can lift the whole team up. And I mean, players on both sides and coaches on both sides, as Saints said, number 9 makes a difference in the secondary and defensive. Of course. I mean, he does things on offense that allows us to do some things defensively that we couldn't without him.
You see a change in the velocity, middle, intermediate routes?
I mean, it's not velocity on the middle and intermediate because, like I said, those are throws that you can complete till you're 60 years old.
That's what I'm figuring,
but it's the timing routes, the yards after the catch. Okay. You've seen a decrease in that.
Is that a byproduct of the wide receiver?
Yeah, those are things that are hard to gauge because if your guys are not getting open, but he's made other guys who weren't great receivers better by being able to throw them open. And I don't know if, like I said, the windows are just getting a little bit tighter. He's not able to get it just ahead of the receiver like he used to. Again, that's age. You know what I'm saying? Tom Brady is not the thrower that he was 3 years. That offense has changed a lot. Like 80% of his passes are less than 10 yards. So, I mean, there are going to be some things that change with age. If they can change the offense to keep making that happen for Drew, if the running game can stay consistent, then you could talk about extending it another year or two. But if not,
well, there's a catch-22 there as well. I mean, how long is Teddy Bridgewater going to sit down and wait? And if you got him look, I don't think anybody pushes a Hall of Famer out the door, okay? But there's a situation where if he is declining, and I don't think he is, that maybe then at that point, they look to Teddy Bridgewater. We're going to take a break. We come back. We're going to talk some Pelicans to LSU and Tulane. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports tonight. Our guest, David Grubb of Sports 1280 and CrescentCitySports.com, Rene Nadeau of CrescentCitySports.com and CBS Radio. We'll be right back after these messages.
Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight, Rene, Nadeau, and David Grubb of CrescentCitySports.com are our guests. We switched to the Pelicans, and what a godsend they've been since David Griffin has taken over. It's a whole new feel here in this city. And you know what's amazing to me is, you know, you would think Zion would be the overwhelming conversation about the Pelicans, but it hasn't been. Again, it's Nickeil Alexander-Walker, it's Jackson Hayes, it's Didi Lozada-Silver, it's what Frank Jackson did in the summer league. It's J.J. Redick and also Derek Favors. Favors coming over in a trade. Redick coming over as a free agent. You know, just again the total change of the narrative here in New Orleans when it comes to the Pelicans. You know, we didn't even mention Nico Melli, who again is now undergoing surgery for a knee injury. He's not going to play. It looks like he's not going to play with the Italian national team, at least not right now. It's probably a scope because they don't think it's too bad. But you know, if I'm David Griffin, if I'm the hierarchy at the Pelicans, I don't want him playing in Italy. I want him to get over here with Aaron Nelson, let Aaron Nelson work with him, and get him ready for the season. But a total transformation. And oh, by the way, we didn't even mention the Lakers core that was traded for Anthony Davis. It's just been amazing for a guy that again has sat through. You know, at the Smoothie King Center, you know, the Anthony Davis saga, so much was expected from last year to this year, and it didn't happen. A miraculous turnaround.
Yeah, it was drudgery.
Yeah,
you know, it was hard.
I never missed a game. I watched every one of them. Believe me,
very hard to be there, to be in the locker room. But yeah, there's a completely different sense. There's a couple articles that I've done this week, both for Crescent City Sports and for the Bird Rights, focusing really on David Griffin's impact in general. The difference, and one of the key points I made, I'm not going to talk badly about Dell Dempsey. He's moved on. Mm-hmm. We're not going to talk about that. But the big difference is there's communication coming from the Pelicans front office on everything.
Yes.
You see Griffin on all platforms.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing podcasts. He's doing television. He's selling this team. He's the Tony Robbins of the NBA. He's making this team a family. He's not building just an organization.
Right.
He uses that word,
right,
and he means it when he says it. This is a family.
He's looking for a buy-in.
He's embracing these guys,
mm-hmm,
and he said one of the key quotes that I pulled out of that press conference the other day was, "We have to make this a place where guys can't envision doing this anywhere else." That mentality has never been the mentality of this franchise. From the day one, when it got here, people were asking to go somewhere else. Right. To have those guys,
you had to overpay to bring someone in.
So to have a Derek Favors say, I wanted to come to New Orleans, I told them that. To have Josh Hart say, I know you can get stuff for me. Don't trade me. I want to be a Pelican. For J.J. Redick to say, I want to be in New Orleans. Right. That's a completely different dynamic, and it's changed the fan base. I think people now want to be a part of this. I think that, again, like you said, it's no longer about any one individual player. We were waiting on Anthony Davis. We waited on Chris Paul. Mm-hmm. Now you're looking at 1 through 15, and you're looking at how guys are going to get minutes.
Right.
That's an incredible problem to have, and I think it's just the tone. The cloud has been lifted for the time being. We'll see what the results are, but for right now, it's a completely different place to be.
Right. We go back to the Jazz. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We go
Buccaneers.
back. All right, Buccaneers. Well, okay, let's go a little further. Let's go back to we've never seen anything like this in professional basketball here in New Orleans, have we?
No. And the thing is, I tell you and I know he was there too. The thing that David Griffin, when he was introduced to us, the media, he went around and introduced himself to every media person. And David may have met him before, but I had not met him one-on-one. And that was really smart because Anthony Davis was still a Pelican, and who knew if he needed to go to David and said, David, listen, man, I need a positive story. Anthony Davis, I know, whatever. I don't know what he was thinking. But the thing is that it was so refreshing to hear him. And I asked him, kind of tongue-in-cheek a little bit, like, when they interviewed for this job, did you interview them? And he said, for every question they asked me, I asked them too. And he said, this is a place I wanted to be. And I asked him about the small market. He said, small market, that didn't scare me. He said, small market means that the players are more important in this area. He said, that doesn't scare me at all. That attracts me to this position. And, something else, a little side note, as much as the Saints go in Ohio State, draft Ohio State players,
yes.
Pelicans with Duke, they can have 5 guys on the court, Frank Jackson,
right.
J.J. Redick,
Right.
Okafor in the middle, Zion, and Brandon Ingram. So you
Let's
got
not forget about J.J. Redick.
Yeah.
5 Dukies. You got 5 Dukies on the court
Right.
at the same time. But the moves he's made, and it's almost like, and I know, I was at the draft like David was, and he's like, David Griffin answers your questions before you ask him.
Mm-hmm.
He knows what you're thinking. He knows, and he just makes you feel so comfortable. And he keeps saying how much Gail Benson has really been behind his team, and that has also been. We talked about that. Whoever came in this year had to make a splash.
Yes.
This is a tsunami. I mean, they have really, really done a bigger job than I think a lot of people, especially nationally, anticipated. David Griffin has not only revamped the roster, but like David said, he's getting guys here that want to be here.
Right.
It's so refreshing, and he's putting character as a priority in this locker room. He wants guys who work together well, who are very unselfish, and I think that's going to pay dividends.
It's not just nationally. I'm like Dave. I'm watching this every single day. I'm watching every single move, and it is the only thing I can equate it to is when Jim Finks came in and he changed the persona of the New Orleans Saints. It was almost instantaneous. Bringing in Jim Moore's knowledge of the USFL, obviously Fink's knowledge of the NFL, what they were able to do. Getting Governor Edwards at that time, Edwin Edwards, about talking Bobby Hebert into leaving Seattle and coming to be the quarterback for the Saints. It was a big turnaround. She almost took a page from Tom Benson's old playbook. I don't know. I'm going to bring somebody in that does know, and I'm going to hand them the keys to the castle. But more than that, giving him everything he needs from, again, money for the practice facility, the expanded staff. I mean, it is for basketball fans in this town, it's a dream come true, and it's just the beginning of the dream.
For a team, and like Rene said, I don't like using the term small market. I think it's a misnomer, because really you're talking about Los Angeles and the other 29 teams. That's really what it is. But, he's the one thing that the Pelicans were committed to building an organization, to having something that was sustainable. And that's what Griffin's main thing is, making something that will last for years and years, constantly being able to bring in players, young players to match with veterans and have that system going. You see it with development. He's already focused heavily on what he's going to do with the G League team. He's already focused very heavily on, with this draft, getting guys in the first round who are developmental guys who will be ready when it's time for them to step up, while you evaluate that Lakers core who needs to grow.
And short-term contracts, right? So you're tied down long-term with guys.
You don't see these 5-6 year contracts that he's getting. The league is getting shorter in that regard too.
Right.
But what he figured out is the stars will come and go. They will make their decisions as they do. Do you have a team? And that's when you look at, and he's mentioned places like Denver in particular. He mentioned Portland in particular, Oklahoma City over the years. You have to build that team so that whenever that star is available and you can pull them into the fold, you've got the setup, and that's what he's working on.
No doubt about it. Look, I'm not asking for any type of predictions now. We got a long way to go, but it really feels good. And I mentioned on the radio show today, and I think you guys would concur, this town doesn't start paying attention to basketball till January. It's been my biggest pet peeve with this town. High school football is huge on a Friday night. Saturday night you got LSU and Tulane and all the other state schools, whoever their allegiance is, and basketball becomes an afterthought. I think this year, when they tip it off in October, there will be fannies in the seats in the stands, and there will be eyeballs on this Pelicans team.
I mean, they've already sold almost 14,000 season tickets, which is incredible.
Yes.
Considering that building has not seen that
No,
kind of
not that.
except for playoff games.
Right.
And again, you have that attraction of the number one pick. You have this up-tempo style of play that's very attractive. You have this whole just general feeling that this team on a night-to-night basis will be able to compete. So I think there's a mystery factor with the Pelicans. There's the sex appeal factor of the players that they have. And then, like you said, this community has, for the first, now it finally feels like a New Orleans team.
Yes.
Before it was somebody else's team that was living here. Now it's ours.
Yeah, and it starts at the top with Mrs. Benson putting the assets up. And look, it took a lot to get David Griffin and write him a blank check and say, all right, look, do what you need to do. And they've done that. Let's talk some LSU Tigers football again. Joe Burrow has become a rock star overnight, huh?
He really has. And you know, the thing is, to show the kind of talent LSU has, you go back to 2007, and they had 4 draft choices, 4 number 1 draft choices, okay? It was in 2000. Anyway, 4 number 1 draft choices, the most they ever had. They have the potential on this team. I'm going to tell you who the players are. LSU could have 5 number 1 draft choices, and I'll tell you who they are. Grant Delp is going to be a number 1 top 5 pick, okay? Christian Fulton could be in the 20s and the 30s. Guys that are going to be swing guys. Caleb Chason, he comes back. Pete Jenkins has said, I've never seen anybody with his kind of talent off the edge. So he could be a number 1 draft choice.
Pass rusher? Come on, you know it.
Okay, now who's the other 2 guys? I really think, because of the position they're in, Jacob Phillips is going to come in the middle, in Devin White's position, 6'4", 230 pounds, and he is a big-time linebacker and hitter. And if he plays well, I'm talking about, 90, 100 tackles, which in that position, he's capable of doing that. He is capable of being a number 1 draft choice. And who's the last one? Might surprise you. But if Justin Jefferson can catch 70 or 80 passes, the scouts love him. He's 6'2", 185. He runs great routes. And if a Justin Jefferson gets with a good offense and because they're going to run 5 wides a lot of times, if he catches 75 to 80 balls, which could happen, all right, you get into the Senior Bowl, and all you have to do is press one team. Right. So LSU could have the most number 1 draft choices that they've ever had. And the defense, example, they created more turnovers than any team in the SEC, 16 last year. Alabama, Auburn, more than anybody. Right. And they allowed the least amount, I think 48% of the opponent's passes. So LSU led the SEC in those 2 categories, allowing the least amount of passes and with the most turnovers. And that's 2 big factors. And Dave Aranda is going to have more talent because Caleb Chason is coming back. He's going to have a better defense this year, even though Devin White is gone.
Yeah, I agree with you. Look, I think they are stout at all 3 levels of the defense. I don't think it's a question on, again, how talented they are. And, of course, Aranda's been a mad scientist. My question is the offensive line. That's the biggest question mark for me going into this season.
Yeah, it's still a big question.
Right.
You didn't see a lot of progress from that line last year. Over the course of the season, even with the injuries and guys having to play who maybe weren't ready, they didn't get better, and that's difficult in the SEC. Line domination, especially when Ed Orgeron is at the SEC Media Days and saying again, we have to beat Bama, we have to beat Bama. There's only one way to beat Alabama, and if you can't dominate them at the line of scrimmage, you are going to lose to Alabama every year. And I am not sure how confident I am in that offensive line. That was a big reason Foster Moreau caught less than 20 balls last season, was because he was in blocking every time. It's the reason that the running game could never really get untracked, is because everybody was crowding the line of scrimmage. So, that line, I don't know if there's a breakout guy on there. I think they have high expectations, but from what I saw last year, it's a good line. It's not an SEC championship type line. Right. Maybe they'll prove us wrong.
Do you think there's an opportunity, Rene? You watch these kids coming out of high school as well. They got 3 kids on that offensive line, freshmen that are coming in, big kids now. One at guard, I think it's Thomas at guard, and then they got the two tackles that are coming in as well. Are those guys possibly again SEC? I mean, they're big enough to be SEC.
I know, but I'm just saying, Cordell Thomas is one guy. His name keeps coming up, but right now I know Chasen Hines has made some tremendous strides, and he was really, really good. Damon Lewis is an NFL guy. Yep. Damon Lewis is an NFL guy, and Lloyd Cushenberry is an NFL guy. Well, Sadiq Charles, it depends how much he advances this year. That's going to be a big question mark. He's really a right tackle. Yeah. But it depends how much. And Bedor Traore and Deculus are going to fight it out. And Traore, he knows what's at stake now. It's the NFL and stuff, and he was like a deer in headlights.
He was. I was expecting him coming for junior college last year.
But, I mean, he was like a deer in headlights, and now he understands what the speed of the game is going to be. I really think that both tackles, they're going to have to get better. Charles took a step back.
Yes, he
Sadiq
did.
Charles took a step back last year. I think he's going to be a lot better. I've talked to some people who would know close to the situation. And I'll be honest with you, too. One person I trust a lot, I talked to Will Clapp when I see him and stuff, and he watches that line really well. And he's told me he's seen some things that is really, and he's one that's told me how much he thought Chasen Hines has improved this year. So I really think you got some better depth, and I think the first line guys are going to be a little bit better. And I'm telling you, the way that offense is going to run, get rid of the ball within 18 seconds. Yeah. They want to go from the time the previous play ends. They want to get rid of the ball. And so, I mean, that's going to be an advantage to the offensive line.
Yeah, that was where I was going to go next, because again, Joe Brady comes in. He puts again at least part of the Saints offense in. They're saying they're taking it all. But the big thing for me is going to be getting the ball out quick with Joe Burrow, not counting on that offensive line to hold their blocks for a long period of time. That to me is one of the keys going forward.
Yeah, Burrow was running for his life all last season.
Yes.
I mean, there were very few opportunities for him to hit receivers in rhythm. So he was doing a lot of check downs. That's why I think Jefferson really didn't pick up till the latter quarter of the season because he just wasn't getting the opportunities. Burrow, speed is clearly something that they're trying to establish. Burrow's talked about averaging 40, 50 points a game. I'm not willing to go that far.
I think it was a lot of heat and home for that weekend.
I'm not willing to put that on the table for LSU, but the main thing is they can't keep going into games, and we've seen it too many times going back to Les Miles and continuing under Ed Orgeron. One really good half of offense, and then a second half where there's no point production and they're hanging on, fighting for their lives against lesser opponents. They have to be able to score continuously unless you're going to do what Alabama did for 12 games last season and blow people out, score 40, 50 points in the first half and walk off the field. But I don't know if LSU's ready to make that jump yet.
Guys, one position, not a lot of talk, but I mean, it's a critical position. We've seen this. Cole Tracy graduates. Now it's either going to be Cade York or Connor Culp. And talk about, again, what Cole Tracy did last year for this team, just knowing you have him.
One game.
Right. Yeah. And now you're going to expect a freshman to come in and to be able to take over here and to be as clutch as he was.
They know what's at stake, and I'm going to tell you what, they are well coached, and I feel really confident that the special teams is going to be. I think they'll do well this year. Ed Orgeron knows what's at stake, and he knows that whoever's fielding for Cole Tracy, that's going to be important.
Right.
Running back is the other position where I think is huge for them.
I think Emory's going to really project to be maybe their starter, but before it's all said and done. But look,
I'm not sure. You know, again, we'll see how they kick once Cam's.
Who do you like?
I think they'll
probably. You think Edwards-Helaire is going to be the guy?
To start.
To start. Yeah. But he's just not a game breaker.
Right.
He's a consistent guy, but he's not a game breaker, and I think that's what they've missed since Leonard Fournette and
they got Davis Price as well. They brought another freshman.
I like him a lot. Davis Price a lot. Yeah, and Curry.
He's got wiggle.
You got four guys there that can play, and again, you just do what you do best. We don't need you for 200 yards a game. Just 10 really, really good plays, and I think the guys understand.
And they have a deep receiving core as well.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Very, very talented.
And we didn't mention Stingley, who people are already talking about as maybe better than
Take a few minutes, guys.
Today.
Jump on it.
I mean, as good as Patrick Surtain Jr. was last year for Bama, Stingley people are looking at him and saying he's a grade above that. Size, speed, hips, all those things. Stingley could come in as a freshman and dominate the SEC.
He could, that's Patrick Peterson. He's that good, and he's a difference maker. And I came on Crescent City Sports. I had my All Louisiana first, second, and third team, and he's first team cornerback. And I just had next to him, yes, he's that good. He is that good.
Right. Maybe one of the reasons why Kelvin Joseph is back in the transfer portal, right? Yeah, no doubt. Let's grab Tom in Metairie before we talk some Tulane. Tom, how you doing today? Welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, guys. I have a few questions. I hope you're patient with me. I'm a big Drew Brees fan, but I still think the long ball is a problem. I could think of 2 or 3 games where he couldn't get the ball again. They were easy touchdowns. I want to see what you think about that. I want to see what your number one concern is for the Saints. I think it's the center, if I had to rank them. And number 3, I want to see what you think about LSU's offensive line. I think it's strength training. These guys seem to get pushed around by Alabama every year. They're good athletes. They got the size, but I don't know if they have the strength. Maybe it's just me. I'll see what you guys think of that. Thanks.
Guys, we already touched on LSU's offensive line. Is center, talk about the center position. Obviously, it's a critical position for this team. And we talked about it early in the first segment. You guys think Cameron Tom's going to be the guy, okay? He's going to be a starter. McCoy will have to learn. It's kind of be an understudy. And, as far as Brees goes, look, I don't think there's any doubt the long ball has taken a hit in terms of him being able to make those throws. But
that's the importance of play action.
Right.
To get those one-on-one opportunities, that's why it's going to be so important for Alvin Kamara to be consistent in the running game.
Talk about Tulane coming off a bowl win, looking to win 2 in a row for the first time in program history. Justin McMillan with a full, much like Joe Burrow, mirroring Joe Burrow, a full year now, and with again now Tulane's new offense. Your expectations?
Darius Bradwell is an NFL running back. He's over 1,100 yards. But I'm a guy that makes that whole team good. First of all, I don't think other than Tulane fans understand how good that defensive line is. That defensive line at Tulane, I'm not crazy, well, maybe, but I mean, the thing is that they are in the top 25 defensive lines in the country. They are that good. Patrick Johnson, 10.5 sacks, 16 tackles for loss, 6'3", 250. He's a junior, and he is a guy that the offenses have to game plan. Number 34 for Tulane. He's that good. That defense is going to win games for him. Willie Fritz has done it the right way. Justin McMillan is a game manager. He will run when he's got to run, and he's good enough passer. And he's got Jalen McCleskey coming in. They've got the Chris Montano guy coming in from Browns and a man at center spot. Jalen McCleskey is really, really good. 167 passes he caught at Oklahoma State. He's going to upgrade that wide receiving core, and you're going to see a much better offense than last year. And I'm going to tell you what, again, defensive line, 29 sacks last year, led the conference.
Right.
Tulane is a lot better than people think.
Right. I don't think it's hyperbole. I'm going to tell you right now, they are a good, very, very good defensive line. No doubt.
Tulane should have been a 9-win team last year. They gave away some games that that they should have won, and a lot of that was because they couldn't complete a pass. Most of the season they were under 50% throwing the football. So if you can just get enough of a threat out of the passing game, they have a stable of running backs. Not just at the top, they've got depth, they've got speed, and they've got guys who can make people. Yes. So if they can just be an average passing team in that conference, be in the middle of the pack, just not turn the ball over. Like I said, with that defense and the schedule in that conference, they should be 8-9 wins this season if things go correctly.
It comes down to the offensive line, much like LSU. I mean, they really kind of mirror each other. Quarterback coming back now with again a year in the system. Both guys transfers. And now you're looking at an offensive line. Again, much like LSU, I think Tulane goes as far as the offensive line takes them.
And I did a story on Crescent City Sports with Corey Dublin, and he promised me they're a lot better.
And he moves from center to guard now, right?
And that's a good position for him. He's a really smart guy, and 4-year starter in high school, which is rare at Jesuit, 2-time state wrestling champion. But Tulane's offensive line is going to also improve, and that's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, that's going to be the key. And of course, Willie Fritz, well, again, building a program right now, right?
Yeah, program building at a school like Tulane, again, you get your freshmen in, you redshirt them, you develop your players, and you get that incremental progress. It's not an overnight switch, but Fritz has put down that they're going to be a tough football team, and I think at smaller schools, that's the way you win is by creating toughness.
Right, Dave, one more time, tell the folks about the radio show when it gets started.
Hard to Paint with David Grubb, August 5th, starting August 5th, Mondays through Fridays, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Sports 1280. You can follow it on Twitter at HITP_with_DG. You can also follow me at DM Grubb. And website coming soon, Twitter, YouTube channel, it'll have everything. So we're doing this big.
Sounds good. David Grubb, Rene Nadeau, thanks so much for being with us tonight on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, they rebroadcast this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. Also statewide, Pelican Sports Television, 9 p.m. every Friday night, and always at ericasher.com. Catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2, and the iHeartRadio app. That is noon to 2 weekdays. You can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com as well. Again, special thanks to our guests tonight, Rene Nadeau and David Grubb. Also, don't forget about CrescentCitySports.com, your go-to site for all local sports. Also, special thanks to Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, also Alex Chacon, Naila Jones, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Oh, by the way, that'll be a day before training camp starts for the New Orleans Saints. Hoorah!